people's emotions and decisions and choices to make sure that they line up with yours. This isn't new. And in fact, these kinds of people and these kinds of psychological states, I think, have been written about for thousands of years. The ancients knew who they were. I think they are reflected in our mythology. The vampires, the unquiet dead, the succubus. A lot of these things can be read as allegories for these kinds of exploitative people. You will often see narcissistic people, particularly the seductive, maybe sexually, maybe not sexually, but very seductive and charismatic narcissistic people are often described as emotional vampires. And it's a really great metaphor because that's what it feels like. It feels like your emotional energy is being sucked out of you and brought into someone else. I'm only 5 or 6 years into realizing this, if I'm right about it. What your first question that you always ask and that you asked me, what brought you to be sitting in this seat today? 5 or 6 years ago, I'm not a religious person, but in terms of the effect that it had, I would describe what happened to me 5 or 6 years ago as an awakening. Um, After many, many years of not living around or near my family, I made a very bad decision. I made a foolish decision. I thought that I could love my mother back to health. And I decided to bring her back into my life, put her in a house that I owned that she could afford because she was poor. And I thought, I'll be retirement for my parents. And within 2 years of doing that, all the screaming, the pathological lying, the exploitation, theft, you name it, all of that stuff began happening at a rapid pace. And I sat there and I looked at myself and I said, what is going on here? I feel like I've gone right back to my childhood. And it became so overwhelming that I had a nervous breakdown. And I don't say that to be dramatic, and I don't want anybody to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, pity, pity. Worst thing that ever happened, but the best thing that ever happened to me, because my mother's pathological behavior was so extreme and so right in my face. And I was in my 40s, and I said, something is so severely wrong here. And if I don't put a stop to it right now, it's going to have an effect on my health.
Sorry about that. Just listening to a really fascinating stream about personality disorders. Sometimes it's interesting to listen to that stuff just because I always enjoy learning about mental health and things like that. It's kind of a given that when you're a writer, you gotta at least know some of the basics about this stuff. It makes your work so much better. Because then you have a sort of a starting point for creating characters. Let me adjust my window. Got the next door neighbors outside talking here. Don't want to invade their privacy or do anything like that. But yeah, it is. It's really interesting to learn about stuff like psychology and things like that. It helps for characters. It also helps you sort of build up a little bit of an understanding about yourself as a person. Just fiddle around with OBS here. Yeah, I think that'll do. Yeah, I'm still really bad at centering my stage here. But so this is just me finishing up a chunk of Dungeons and Debt. It'll be out 1 week from tomorrow. I am down to just 5 shots. I was originally down to 4 shots, but kind of needed one more shot in this little section here that I'm doing the background on. streaming window here so I can actually see what the hell's going on. But yeah, this this little toon is almost done. I'm satisfied with it. I'm not as happy with it as I should be. That's just the perfectionist in me, though. I know that there are areas I can do a little bit better on, but you kind of hit a wall because you don't have as much experience as you think you should have or you need. But it's been a pretty interesting journey making this toon happen, because I've always wanted to do a D&D animation, but I've never quite had the right idea. And now I've got the right idea. I just need to make sure I put in the right work here. So the interesting thing is this is about 42 seconds long right now. I'm thinking it's going to be 54 seconds of actual animation and then just a few credits, which means it'll probably come out to 58 seconds total from what I'm estimating. I'm still playing around with timing on this because I don't want to minimize anything that I don't need to, so I can let things like the backgrounds get shown off properly or any other odd effects that I put in. But it's exciting. It's kind of exciting to actually have something brand new instead of one of my other characters or something like that done. There we go. So this is the final room in the toon. I ended up spending a fair amount of time designing everything the other day, and then was fighting to choose the right colors and the right lighting and things like that. And, you know, there's my lighting layer. This is what I call lazy lighting, where I just take a black background like this and use the blur option, and then sometimes I play around with the alpha level to decide on how dark I want it. Sometimes things don't need to be as dark as I think they do, and I have to lighten them up. But you can see here, this is just lazy lighting, as I call it. Scroll that down to 60%, so this actually shows up a little bit more. There we go. Yeah. So this is lazy lighting, where you can see that there's just enough darkness there to imply you've got a couple sources of light. So I've got the lighter areas in the stone here. Those aren't supposed to be windows per se, but as it is right here, you can see on the basic layer, everything is passable. It's nothing fantastic. But if I do that, the lazy lighting kind of does the work for me. It's still not perfect, but you get to see, because of the other use of colors here, I've got some very crude textures to what's going on here. So, uh-oh. And this is why you have to pay attention to what you're doing. I thought this was a different layer, so you can see my lazy lighting symbol. I've got the lighting source from over there. This needs to be a separate symbol graphic because now I've got these areas right there. Damn, it's kind of irritating when I do that, just because it's a bit of a waste of time. Yeah, geez, you can even see it right up there and there. I'll just have to be a little bit more careful, because now I have to undo the little bit of work I did over here, which is fine because there's always a way to be just a little bit lazy. So I'll just copy and paste this. I'll copy it anyways. Let me just do that. That's one. There. Boom. There we go. So now I just get rid of that layer. Put the one I copied over here. Make it a dopey symbol. And I believe this is about what I had previously. So without the blur effect or anything like that, that's all that lazy lighting layer is. But I attach a blur to it. Adjust it like so. And then play with my alpha. Boom. Problem mostly solved. We'll just do that. And there we go. Problem solved. Good evening. Afternoon, James. Just playing around here, trying to finish up some lighting in this shot right here. I still haven't entirely decided if there's an actual if this area here is an actual light source yet. But I've got a week to sort it out. But I'm having some trouble bringing in a little bit of life here, because the other setting I had, go back a scene, the other setting, which was very bright and colorful, as you can see, in order to create the illusion of there being life here, I've got things like a glimmer going back there or right there, and I'm not sure if I want to do that on this new setting. Yes, I did. I just sent you an email the other night. I didn't know what type of an art style you wanted. I did have to say I won't be able to get to that until probably next Monday. So I am finishing up this toon. I've got all of 5 shots left, no more action, thankfully, because it takes me a week to do a couple seconds of action. And I've got some of the audio for the toon finished. So I got my usual voice actress just about ready to do some lines, even though there is no dialogue in this toon at all. It is going to be a little bit more Tom and Jerry-ish. So there's verbal reactions to what's going on, and that's about it. So it's just grunts, groans, things like that. But I've still got a bit of audio to work on. But for right now, this is here's the first little section of the toon. Oops, god damn it. Gotta make sure all my layers are open up. So that is 18 and a half seconds long. I've still got ambient audio that has to be added in there because this is a cave setting. I've gone through about 20 free audio sample files online from YouTube, and I have yet to find the right one. But at the very least, I got the right sound effects for the boots. And if I do this, got the usual TF2 freeware sound effects for certain things, like the spears. But it's getting there. I gotta get a little bit of a wind ambient sound effect here. Otherwise, if you the deer pooping is the only other sound effect there. And besides, I've got, you can see here winds blowing in her hair there. I've got to get a little bit of that there too. But it's getting there. The second scene is also mostly done. I've still got little bits of extra audio that needs to be done. This is always the problem when you have to do sound sync. You got to find the right audio that brings some life to what you got here. So let's see, that is about 37 seconds or so, I think. Actually, while I'm doing something here, I need to extend this another few frames. Yeah, I'm really getting paranoid on my timing because this has all got to be under 60 seconds. And as it's looking at right now, this is probably going to be a solid 58 seconds, including whatever credits I have. So this is where I've left off. I've got a shot I'm putting in. That's the shot that's not there yet. So yeah, this is all still a little abrupt. I've got to add her arms holding up the map here and lowering, and then cut to her expression right there. So I'm still adjusting with my timing. Let's see, this is 10. This is 9.5. Yeah, this comes out to about 44, 45 seconds as is. Jesus. If I was able to do everything that I've done here and only have to fuss about it a little bit and still have to be at least 3 seconds behind where I am now, so I would have 42 seconds, I'd be a little bit more comfortable. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is the credits. Because I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to recycle the map graphic for the credits. It feels appropriate. But I want to make sure that there's enough time to, have the voice actress, the songs, and then my name down here at the bottom, and that'll be it. But it's getting there. I'm still kind of amazed that I've gotten as much done as I have over 5 weeks now. Because I've never tackled a toon like this and had the luck that I've had. Usually there's 1 or 2 mistakes on the way that slow me down. But yeah, you can see as of right now the backgrounds, they're okay, they're just very flat. And I need to bring a little bit of life to what I've got. And I don't want to just keep relying on glimmers in the background like I did with the crystals. Because while that works for the crystals, this is you can tell from the very crude texture I have here that this is all stone. And I also still need to put another eye up there and another eye up there. And there's a reason that you see a pattern here with 3 eyes with these sections of the wall here. I just haven't gotten to that point yet. But yeah, I'm getting there. I'm thinking that I also need to adjust back here a little bit more so I can create just a hint of texture. Because as it is right now, everything here is a little too blank. And if I scroll down here, you can see I use some more lazy lighting to create the illusion of texture. which is the way to get around that if I really want to cheat a little bit more, is to do this. I figured out a few years back ways to sort of I really want to say just be lazy and create an illusion of there being texture as opposed to using a lot of coloring and things like that. The only problem with doing it this way is then I have to manually adjust the amount of blur in certain directions. So you can see right there it doesn't show up, even though the color outline of the layer here says that, yeah, I've made all the little blurs there. So it doesn't really show anything there as it stands, but pull up my properties. Okay, so this is manually adjusting the blur, and this was something I always really liked that Flash had back when it was still called Flash. So I can just cheat a little bit. This is horizontal. Little blur adjustment. You can see now it looks like there's a little bit of texture there. And then if I go up like that to vertical, you get the same effect. And if I add just the right amount of both, it kind of looks like there's something going on there. Hey, Chavo. But now it looks like everything is really bright behind her. So just do a little bit of that. Yeah, there are all kinds of ways you can do things. And it kind of makes me sad that I never learned how to do a lot of this stuff properly. And I say that because I've always just dicked around and done things my own way and experimented. But in my defense of my laziness, there weren't a lot of tutorials for how to do things like this with Flash way back when either. So let me try that out. That's a little much, but yeah, that's a little much. Whew. Oh, I see what I did. God damn it, I did it again. Here, let me just do this. This is what happens when you cannibalize your own pieces a little too much. You forget what's what. So this is already a separate a graphic that's used on another layer. So here, this is what I'll do, because I'm still trying to be a little lazy but not sacrifice my quality too much. So here, this almost looks cobwebbish as it is. There. Just increase the y-axis. And so I'm still trying to create the illusion of texture back there. So I just do this again. The only difference is this time, I think I just do a little bit of this. Because when this blurs, these are all going to get blurred at a different angle. And you got to be careful because sometimes you create interesting illusions that come with it. So just turn this into a symbol, name it whatever the hell, and add the blur. So you can see if I go in this direction, it looks you get these darker lines that go right there. And while those are good for certain effects, I don't want those. So if I go up like that, now it almost creates the illusion that there's lighting and texture there. And if I do this, and adjust that, now the protagonist stands out on the screen just a little bit more. If I block off my borders like that, you can see we've almost got an illusion that there's texture, and this is just 2 layers of shadows that I'm playing with. I think I'm going to do one last adjustment on this, because this is something I've always struggled with when I do my animations, and that's just trying to find the right amount of actual work, and then just these little tricks to change things up. Because if I do this, this is, you know, all of 2, maybe 3 minutes worth of work. And then that means instead of me sitting around for 20 minutes correcting lighting and shadows, then I can be a little lazy and do this for a layer or 2. And you still get a nice effect. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it, as long as it adds a little something to the actual graphics, as opposed to you know, taking away through sloth or too much animation recycling, it's kind of nice. Granted, this all kind of looks like it's a witch's house now, and I've actually got to add because this is something I just added in. I have to manually put that in now. But this is something I've always enjoyed about animation, whether I like it or not, is being able to control every single little detail. And you find ways to really add life to your work. And I think it was about 5 years ago, I was really unhappy with the quality of my work because I didn't really have any of this life to it. I would have characters sort of standing around and talking, and I could do an okay background or 2, but nothing ever really felt like it was alive. And I've found a few ways to create that illusion now, and it makes me happy. You can see, because this has been shrunk so much, it doesn't even show up much as a shade, so I have to compensate just a little bit with my alpha level. And then, yeah, I think that's pretty good. Mostly works. Yeah, this is it's too much here on the top. Okay. Yeah, you got to figure out how to keep an eye on this stuff. But yeah, I suppose my own obsessive nature over my work and trying to get everything to match isn't entirely a bad thing. Because what I'm trying to do with my framing here is still to keep the focus on my protagonist. Shrink my screen there just a bit. Save that just because I don't want to lose my last few minutes worth of work. So yeah, this is always some of the more time-consuming parts of animation, just trying to make sure that none of the stuff overshadows what's there too much. Because what I want to do is I want to keep the focus meaning your eyes as the audience. I want to keep your eyes here, and then down here you'll notice it's empty. Well, because I haven't finished drawing that frame yet, but essentially this is the reason that the character is in this whole place to begin with. So I've got my cartoon outline showing that the treasure is missing. And again, I've got everything centered here, although I need to adjust this just a little bit. Again, my my lighting obsessiveness. Oops. So all this stuff kind of has to come together as perfect as I can. So yeah, yeah, these are gonna have to be lighting sources. It looks like. Oh, hello, Sokoshi. Let's see. You asked. Hello, been following you since previous channels. Just wanted to ask why you ended up deleting those and the content with them. Was always curious about it. Uh, I ended up doing that due to real life stress, primarily. I answered this last week, and I'll probably have to keep answering this because not everybody's going to catch these streams. But what ended up happening was I crashed and burned due to circumstances in life outside of my control. So I ended up taking care of an elderly relative until she died. This was my grandmother. And so I was at the same time I'm taking care of her, I was also my grandfather's caretaker. And then about the same time as when everything was going downhill with her, my father had a heart attack at 57, and when she was down to just the last few months of her life, it was cancer got her. In the end, it got her real bad too. And even though I always did have some issues with my grandmother, watching somebody die from cancer is really horrible, especially when there's nothing you can do. And hospice essentially has dropped them off, has said if things get worse, give us a call, but here's the morphine. Give her 2 droplets every 2 hours. If the pain gets worse, you can increase it up to 3 or 4. Don't go beyond, I think it was 5 is what I wasn't supposed to do. So while all this is going on, see, my father had a heart attack 7 months prior to all this happening. I was kind of put in charge of taking care of my grandmother's health because my grandfather he was getting to be too old to be doing all this stuff by himself. He was 91. Wait, yeah, 91. She was 84 when it first hit her, and I had a solid year of her decline before it finally got her in January of 2016. So while I'm taking care of that, I've got other parts of my family life falling apart. So my father's heart attack resulted in him having 2 stents put in. And then just when we're down to the last few months of my grandmother's health, I get the notice that my mom's health isn't doing so good all of a sudden. And it looks like she's got dementia setting in at 57. And in the years since then, it's turned out, yeah, she didn't just have dementia setting in. There was an incident where she was doing just wiping the windows down, and my father heard a crash, so he got out of his office to go see what the hell was going on, and found my mom on the floor, and she was on her knees, and she said she didn't know what happened. Her knees just buckled. Well, that all turned out to have been a stroke. So we had a stroke. We have dementia settling in on her. Got my father having a heart attack. Got my grandmother dying very slowly over the course of a year. I ended up getting kind of put in charge of it because I was kind of their caretaker at that point. I was finishing up my last year of school, and everything was just falling apart little by little. And in case it needs to be said again, I think I've said a few times that the toll this stuff takes on you is really fucking brutal. And I didn't get a lot of help from aunts and uncles on this because everybody was finishing up their own retirement. because they were all generally getting to be retirement age, and they were getting to that point where you need to put that last certain amount of time in, or it'll jeopardize your retirement. So there was that going on, but also I was unemployed, so combine all that stuff in over the course of a year. That's a lot to take in. And then there's the doctor's visits and other things like that. I ended up taking over the cooking for the most part because after they confirmed it was cancer that she was suffering from, and she just lost a kidney to it, a whole goddamn kidney. I started to have to pitch in more and more and more, and it went from doing dinners to doing shopping to taking people to doctor's visits. My grandfather only stopped driving because of COVID. We were never able to quite get him to stop. That was the one good thing that came out of COVID. He wasn't able to drive anymore because he wasn't able to renew his license. And I don't know if you know anything about Portuguese people. We are incredibly fucking stubborn, and that's kind of where I get my stubbornness from. That's where my father gets his stubbornness from. We all get it from my grandfather. It's not a vindictive stubbornness. It's just if you tell us we can't do something, we have a habit of doing it just to prove people wrong. I don't know if it's pride or whatnot, but this is a year of my life, and I got wrapped up in some drama on Newgrounds, which didn't help. Decided I didn't really belong there and had my account deleted. And essentially, if I can look back on it now, I recognize what the problem was. The problem was I was crashing and burning, trying to do way too much at once by myself. Because most of my relatives are out of state, it really was on me. Oh, yeah. It's okay. Yeah, the answer was, holy hell, I'm so sorry. I figured it was burnout or real life issues, but I didn't realize it was everything collapsing. You didn't have to reiterate the whole story and relive it over my question. No, it's fine. This was several years ago, and it's part of life. Nobody ever tells you how hard it's going to hit you, and there's a reason. Because sometimes it's soul crushing. Sometimes it's easier to accept when you recognize there isn't anything you can do other than make sure that the person you're taking care of is comfortable and is able to relax and enjoy what time they have left. But they also don't tell you that nothing is consistent when it gets to that point. So I'm not really reliving it. It's just it's stuff that happened, and even though it was incredibly stressful, I'm happy I was able to be there and take care of it. Because unfortunately, as I was saying, I've got 6 relatives, and 5 of them lived in other states. And the only one who would have been able to do a better job than me would have been, I have an aunt who used to do elder care. She was specifically an elder care nurse, but she ended up having to pretty much quit and retire early because she developed MS. So that would have been a lot for her to deal with. So I've always been able to kind of, saving for auto recovery. I've always been able to disassociate myself a little bit with this due to my own neurological conditions in life. But yeah, it wasn't easy, and I would have regretted not being able to do what I did if I didn't do it. Because unfortunately, stuff like that doesn't just stop happening because you want it to. It's like right now, I've had a solid year off from just about anything really stressful. And then, 40 days ago, my father was having some heart issues again. I so I did what I did before. I pretty much took over everything. So, granted, because my father is younger, he's going to be 64 in about 3 weeks. I've taken over the cooking. I've taken over the bulk of the shopping. And unfortunately, my father has become a little bit absent-minded on things, so he didn't get his health insurance for the year from the government, so he's on a short-term healthcare plan right now, and we've got to get him to the cardiologist and find out what the hell's going on, because I know he's got some blockage, but because there's nothing I can do about that, as I am not a doctor, got to do stuff that my grandfather taught me. So when my grandfather was about my father's age, he was having some heart issues also. But my grandfather also didn't drink, which my father's had to give up some of that, which is a shame because he does enjoy having a couple glasses of wine or a couple beers when he can, but he's down to maybe like a can of beer every other day now. But I kind of looked into things, and so I do all the cooking and I do the bulk of the shopping when I can, and so his diet has changed, and so he's having fish and he's having salad just about every day a week, which is very hard on him because because I have to admit that's been what my diet has been also, to a point, with the exception of I don't eat fish. I can't take the taste. I have trouble with the texture. Don't like the smell. But the problem is fish is so good for your heart and everything else that sometimes you have to, put a clothespin on your nose and just chew it down real fast. So he's been having, that's what his diet has been for 6 weeks now. And between that and extra fruit, he's doing pretty good. But from all the research that I've done and stuff that I learned from my grandfather about heart health and things like that, this all takes time. So I kind of had a feeling that I was only going to get a year off from doing any of this stuff, and I don't know why I got that feeling earlier this year, but I just kind of had a feeling that I was just going to only get about a year off before stuff was going to start happening again. So between my father's heart, which looks like things are getting better. You stop eating the crap. You start doing a little bit more proper exercise and eating well, and your body will take care of itself. But he still may have to get some kind of surgery down the road. I don't know. His insurance finishes, I guess, vesting or whatever the hell the term is, next Tuesday. So after that, we'll try and get him to the cardiologist, and which will probably be another month-long wait because that's how things always are. And I've heard that there is a shortage on. There's a particular dye that you have to take, that you drink, and they put you under. I can't remember what type of a camera this is. Yeah, I used to know this stuff a lot more when I was living with my grandfather and being his caretaker. But there's a dye you take, and it illuminates your arteries to show how clogged up things are, or how functional they are, and things like that. And normally that would be what we would do for my father. But because there's a shortage, because we get that dye from China, he's most likely just going to have an EKG. So that's kind of what my focus has been for the last 5 weeks. That's also why I started this project. I actually just I was getting kind of burned out on my other stuff, and I needed a break from what I normally do. Ooh, that's not looking good. Yeah, you can see continuity error here with the lighting. Not you. Whoa, definitely not you. Oh, that's why. God damn it. Yeah, that might be why there was a continuity error. But so I'm essentially my folks' caretaker now, because my dad's been a little absent-minded since he had that heart attack. So that means I gotta be kind of a nag. Oh damn it! Look at that. That's clumsy. So yeah, you can see how my lighting, my shadows here have changed just a little too much. There we go. That's good. So yeah, I'm taking care of my folks, just like I was taking care of my grandparents, and it's a hell of a thing in life when you have to do this. It's even more awkward when you realize you've inadvertently been doing stuff like this for all your life. And at that point, it starts to get a little irritating because then it's just like choices are getting made for you and you don't get to do anything but react to them. There we go, that's not bad. Oh, what's this project then? This is Dungeons in Debt. So, this was my this was my anti-stress project, because the first 3 weeks of getting my father on his new diet and making sure everything's okay, because last thing you want to do is be forced to have to hyper fixate on every little thing the person you're watching over is doing. So this is my way of taking a break, since I am kind of a workaholic as it is. So this is a Pico Day toon. This is got some Castle Crashers elements to it. The idea is this was kind of my original thing, but the Pico Day stuff kind of fits it really well, so I can't really deny that. So maybe adjust the window slightly to just this. So this is what the toon is. It's very basic. It's just a character going after treasure. So I've only got a few of my Castle Crasher references in it. I've got some more to put in. But here's what the toon looks like right now. This is scene 1. Make sure all my windows are good. Okay. Okay, that is scene 1. And this is scene 2. And then scene 3 is what I'm working on right now, where I'm adding in some lighting. And I've got one shot in this blank area here that I'm trying to piece together. No music or audio for this just yet, because this is still work in progress. Oh, and there's autosave kicking in right now. I need to change that from 5 minutes to 7 minutes. And that's where I've left off right now. I've still got... That's better. I've got lots of little details to put in. And as I was saying before, I haven't figured out how to add the right amount of life to these backgrounds just yet. Because the other for the crystal area here, you know, I've got glimmers and stuff like that, and reflections from the crystals glowing in the background, which creates a little bit of life, but I'm not sure what to add to this area just yet. Yeah, she's looking for the king's crystal. I've still got two more references to put in. You know, I've got the deer right there, which squeezes out a big fat turd, and then got for, I've got for the fight scenes. You can see the Castle Crasher's damage graphic, and then over here I've got a helmet from one of the knights. It's supposed to be old and rusty. I'm probably going to have to put some more colors in a few areas because rust always has that weird blotchiness to it. But this is all meant to be a 1 minute short. Although technically it has to be 59 seconds on YouTube, which means my credits will have to be a little shorter than I want, at least on YouTube. This is going to be on Newgrounds next Monday also. But yeah, you can see I've almost got the lazy lighting here sorted out. It's just some of the shadows are at the wrong amount of placement. Wrong amount of placement. They're placed improperly because you're not supposed to be noticing. You can see how there's a gap of motion. You can see what I like to do is I have these these squares here that are just stones. I've got some spacing here that I use for reference. It's a lazy way of keeping track of where things are positioned. But you can see right there, there's sort of a lighter area right there. It shrinks way too much right there, so I've got to do that. Yeah, that's still not quite right. But yeah, these are all little things that I've learned on my way. So yeah, this is 5 weeks worth of work. I shelved a few of my other projects temporarily right now because I needed to just focus on one thing, and I wanted to do something new. And then I also realized I don't have a lot of characters of my own just yet. So sorry to hear that, Eternal Sentinel. My connection was pretty crappy the other day too, so yeah, this is going to get uploaded next Monday. I've got 5 shots left, and then I'm done with the animation, and then I can just focus it on a little bit of background detail, and then finally the last of the sound sync. And hopefully my voice actress will get to me by Friday or so, and I can put her vocal reactions, we'll say, because they're not really lines. And I'm really not liking how much this gap is. So I will let my OCD take over. But I've had to really grow really fast this past year. Not just as a person, but for storytelling and things like that stuff. And that's actually not a lot of fun. Yep, well, catch you later, Sentinel. Hopefully your connection gets better soon. But yeah, I've had a year to push myself as an artist and as a writer. Nope, that's too much. That's better. And it's always kind of unfortunate because I've been pushing myself to improve my screenwriting. I've really slacked off on that. Just adjust the blur there a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, this is a big part of animation. It gets to be a little tedious, but you got to really nitpick all this stuff. It's important because all these details, they get to be a pain in the ass in the long run, which is why you have to do things little by little. But everything combined looks so good. When you get it right, it is worth it, I find. Oh, and in case you didn't know, this is all drawn by mouse. I do have a Wacom tablet, but because I've always had a phobia of, you know, getting getting nice stuff and then having it break on you because you didn't take care of it or just bad luck, I've always been scared to use it. I've got it right. I've got it right. Yeah, I've got it right next to me, but I'm not. I haven't touched it in probably 2 months. I just keep getting scared I'm going to drop the damn thing and it's going to break, and then well, that's it. That's $300. That's $300 of hardware gone for good. But that's a phobia I've always had. It comes from growing up poor. You get nice when you get nice stuff, you don't get a replacement for it, so you have to take extra good care of it. And sometimes you don't get a chance to take extra good care of stuff, and so it's always a one-off. So I always get a little paranoid. Well, it's like I shouldn't say a little paranoid. I get very paranoid about it. So this is just all me doing my usual mouse work. And it's funny because I learned how to draw by mouse 20 years ago. And the whole reason I did that was because they didn't have Wacom tablets or anything like that. And then when they had them out, the first versions they had out were like the bamboos. Or at least that's what they're called now. I don't remember what they're called then. But the bamboos, where you draw on the tablet, you watch the monitor to see where your placement of everything is. There we go. That's looking really good now. And I was never, because I'd been drawing by mouse for about 7 years when those were starting to become affordable. I played around with one and I couldn't really build up the connection to what I was seeing on screen and what I was seeing on. I just couldn't really make the visual connection. It's a pain in the butt. So now that I've got the touch screen one where I can see the monitor and everything, yeah, I could use it, but I'm scared to. I don't want it to break. And because I'm already a clumsy enough person as is, I already know the chances of that happening are pretty good. And it's a really crappy feeling to break something that you spend a lot of money on. But it's worse when you know you're already a clumsy person and that chance increases. So, but yeah, just drawing everything by mouse is still kind of how I roll. Yeah. Oh, you still use mouse too, Soko? Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, you got to do special exercises for your elbow and your wrist because our bodies weren't quite made to do all the stuff we do by mouse with them. But we're also not supposed to be sitting down for 12 hours a day drawing stuff. So there's a middle ground that everybody has to really find that works for themselves. Okay, I think this is the last little bit of detail I need to put in right here. That's what I want. So I've got just a little bit more lighting and shading to do here. Oh, damn autosave. Blah. I love it and I hate it, but I'm also probably going to have to buckle down and get a better computer. I've only had this computer now for about a year. I got it for cheap off Amazon. The problem is the processing speed isn't quite what they said it was, so it's a little slow, and if you still playing around with stuff like Flash, it is a bit of a memory hog. Even even though this is portable. There we go. Let's see. My hands have been definitely stiffer since taking on a new job, as I rarely draw anymore. I saw you were back a year or two ago. It made me really glad to see I hadn't quit forever. Yeah, I'll tell you a secret. I can't quit. Um, and the reason I can't quit is because this is what I do. Whether I like it or not, this is what I'm always hyper fixated on. Some of that comes from being on the spectrum, some of that comes on the desire to just grow as an artist, and the problem with that is you can only grow as an artist by doing stuff. It's not like being a researcher where you have to spend all that time looking into stuff to make connections. As an artist, you gotta keep doing it. You gotta keep the grind going, and you gotta find new ways, to do stuff. And in my case, my mind is hardwired to all this stuff, and it gets to be very irritating because, well, it's my special interest, and I don't get a say in it. It's either I give in or I don't function as well as I could. I used to kind of think of it as sort of a therapeutic outlet for stress. It's very much an obsession, but it's not it's not the worst obsession I could have. I mean, I could if I really wanted a bad obsession, I could go to Reddit and go to the R Politics forum. Ugh, it's those people are out of their fucking minds. You really want to have a bad day? Go read. Just spend 5 minutes reading other people's comments and just listen to all the hyperbole where nobody wants to talk to each other. They want to talk down to each other, and they want to freak out, and you don't get shit done that way in life. And I'm a little too old to have the same idealism that a lot of these other weirdos online do. But also, when I'm doing stuff like this, it really makes me happy. I enjoy sitting down and creating all this stuff. And so, I like being able to grow as an artist and actually see my own progression. It's a real bitter pill to have to swallow when you realize how many people out there don't want to be themselves or do their own thing. They want to do what other people want or what other people expect. And I know life doesn't give us a lot of choices. And sometimes you got to do that, but you still have some time to be you. And arguing about politics X number of hours a day, that ain't healthy at all. That's actually pretty sick. Yeah, Reddit is where conversation goes to die. And it didn't used to be like that. I remember when I eventually joined Reddit X number of years ago, it was sort of in its last hurrah, where people would still be kind of quirky but have interesting things to say, and not everybody would lash out if they didn't get someone to agree with them. And the overall atmosphere was a little bit more playful. But then I think it was there 2013. After that, everything had to get more political and more political and more political and blah blah blah. I'm right, you're wrong. You're a fascist. You're a Nazi. Yeah, I would say really the most depressing thing about Reddit is the damage that language has suffered because of people overusing words. And it's funny, there was a time when if you called somebody a Nazi, that had a meaning. Somebody would hear that and go, wait, I'm not a Nazi. What the hell are you talking about? Whereas now, because that term has been so overused, it doesn't faze people anymore. I remember Stephen Fry was discussing the death of language uh, in one of his what is it? In one of his speeches, because I know he's very big on speaking to the public and stuff like that, that's a good skill to have. But he was lamenting the death of language, where people's vocabularies had been growing smaller, and words were getting overused to the point where they were losing their impact. Whereas now, if you call somebody a Nazi, half the time they're just gonna say, they're not even gonna get fazed by it. That's because everybody has been using that as a go-to word for years. Or in the case of the world of gender, calling somebody a rapist, that doesn't have a meaning anymore. And it doesn't have a meaning because one, the word has lost its impact, and second, it has been so overused and used incorrectly. And that's horrible. The boy who cried wolf is going to be out of control with the amount of ridiculous finger pointing, not to mention trying to destroy people's lives over opinions. Oh, excuse me. Get the cat down here showing off her belly. Yeah, language has taken a lot of impact, a lot of hits. Everything has lost its impact, and it's sad because, excuse me, hiccups. It's sad because language is really an impressive thing all by itself. All the different words we have and use for different meanings. You know, you're not just pretty, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous. Things like that, or you're immaculate, you're spectacular. These are words that don't get used so much anymore, and it's always kind of made me sad because I'm in the business of writing when I can. I'm realizing how much of a dinosaur I'm starting to turn into. I'm also realizing the limits of my own vocabulary. So I ended up trying to improve my screenwriting this last year. That was part of my plan, since I wanted to grow as a writer. So I got my one webisode pilot, submitted it to a few contests. It's the first actual professional thing I've written. And so far I think I've submitted to like 30 contests. Haven't won anything other than 2 honorable mentions. My placing hasn't been too bad. I've gone from quarterfinalist to finalist to honorable mention. And I've got more contests that have accepted my work than turned it down, which is always good. But I actually just had a real bitter score that really pissed me off the other day, because I'm pretty sure the reader, either I got a bad reader or I got somebody who just didn't like my work. So, my webisode pilot takes place in Depression era Texas, and it's about a newspaper girl who wants to be a reporter, who has their family paper is getting shut down by the bank, and the bank is repossessing everything. This is 1932, which was the height of the Depression. This was the year when everybody lost everything. And there just wasn't anything going around. It was a really horrible year. So you essentially would be really fucked to be in this situation, because It's guaranteed starvation. But she ends up encountering a mobster. Boy, look at that. That still needs work. So she encounters a mobster, and he's a wanted guy. So all she's got to do is get some proof that he's there, and let the feds come in and get him, and then she gets reward. And she gets enough. And if she pulls it off, she's going to get enough money to save the family business and maybe have a little bit left over. And so she finds out where he is, goes in, and it turns out that what's really going on is he's a counterfeiter. And he's working for for a cult. And they're desperate to have him counterfeit a lot of money really quick. And it has to be done with certain specifics, like a certain printing plate. And it turns out what's really going on is this: it's a cult, and the cult has been entrapped by a Lovecraftian entity, and they have to sacrifice money to the master. Otherwise, it's gonna just take everything out of them, and they're gonna go from being people to being things. And so she ends up getting because the protagonist is a klutz. She ends up kind of getting ensnared into working for the entity, and very slowly figuring out what's going on, because the entity itself, it's an original monster or creation. Because I didn't want to take something like Cthulhu or Shumagora or Yog-Sothoth or anything that Lovecraft did. I want to do my own thing. That way, if I fuck up, I can just say, well, I did my own thing. It's not like I'm bastardizing the official stuff. But I've got a lesser god that is essentially responsible for economic collapses in humanity. Every time it wakes up, it triggers a collapse, and it always attaches itself to groups of rich people and then sucks them dry. And then it goes back to sleep, and then the world's economy recovers, and it's been doing this for hundreds of years. But it's very angry at its latest cult, because what it does is it sort of infects really rich people, and they start giving up all their money, and everything they have gets sacrificed to this Lovecraftian entity. And essentially what it's really doing, because I was thinking about this the other day, it doesn't really care about money. What it is it's the value that is placed upon it that this thing is after. And I would realistically, this would be kind of almost a lazy, oh, damn it, wrong one, a lazy god. Nothing like the classic Eldritch horrors. So that's what she's up against. She goes, I've got my twists and turns, and the one thing I did is about it. It's been 9 months. I submitted one of my drafts of this to a guy who saw my script, and he offers screenwriting coverages. And it turns out that this guy actually has worked in the film industry for like a decade or so. And what he is now is he offers script coverage. So you pay him X number of dollars. Oops, gotta close that one. See, what is it? It's like if you give him a feature script, then you have that's like for $50. He'll get back to you in a week with his notes, and he'll say, "This is what I liked. This is what I didn't like. Here's my scores on your dialogue, your characters, and everything else." And so he let me, he sent me a DM on Reddit, and I took him up on his services, and I got a discount because my script was only 11 pages. And it's always very comforting to hear that a professional likes your work, especially when you're not a professional. But he said he loved my dialogue. I actually got a perfect score on dialogue according to this guy. This guy who's actually worked with Oscar winners and things like that. And so that's very comforting. And that gives me an idea of where my strong points are. So I submitted my short to a screenwriting competition, not expecting anything of it other than I just want to get a few good notes. Maybe I'll get a plate. Maybe I'll place. Maybe I won't. And the draft that I'd hammered out was pretty much the last draft that I did, which everything seems to be functioning and whatnot. And I got my notes, and my actually scratched that note. I didn't get notes. That was part of the reason I was upset, because I thought I was just getting at least half a page of notes. But what they sent me was my overall score for this webisode pilot, and I've got all of a sudden I went from being an honorable mention to on at least two other competitions, which they're smaller competitions, so I'm not expecting the world from them. But I've gone from being a finalist, semi-finalist, quarter-finalist, honorable mention, to getting this one score from this one screenwriting contest group. And it was like they gave me a 5.67 out of 10 on this webisode pilot. And that really pissed me off, more than it should have. The problem is, if I hadn't submitted my work to the guy on Reddit who runs his coverage service to help people out, and he doesn't charge an arm and a leg for it either, which is really appreciated, I wouldn't have known what my strong points are. So they gave my dialogue a 6 out of 10, which really that raised my eyebrow. But they also gave my originality a 6 out of 10. And that was when I started to realize something was up, because those had been my strong points in any of the other feedback that I've gotten from any of the other competitions. So I kind of realized that something was up, that this person who read my work, one, they didn't like it. Second, I think they just disregarded it. So I spent half the day wondering if something was wrong with my work. Did I send them? Maybe I sent them the wrong draft. Maybe I didn't do this right. Maybe I didn't do that right. And that's kind of when I drew the conclusion. No, they just whatever reader I got, I don't think they liked my work, because all the essentially what a 5.67 out of 10 tells me is that whoever read my work just didn't get anything out of it. And that's very depressing as a writer, to be put in the middle and just say, oh, yeah, it's so-so. But to not get any reason makes everything a little bit worse, because then it's just a blank. Yeah, here's your D minus. I'm not gonna tell you what answers you got wrong. Here's your D minus. Go away. So I ended up taking a look online, seeing what other people who went to this site, this competition, seeing if they had if there were any similar results that other people had, and yeah, some people had worse stories. I was reading one guy actually won some competitions with his script and couldn't even get into this place. And if this was a bigger screenplay contest, I would understand that, but it's essentially like middle. Yeah. And I'm also aware of my own shortcomings as a writer. But you also got to know You got to know what your own skill set is. A writer is what the level of your work is, and just essentially where you are. So I actually do have, and since I actually do have a pretty good sense of where I am, that made everything a little bit more bitter pill to swallow. But just means I won't give them my money again, and I'll also dissuade anybody from sending their work there if it ever comes up in conversation. Oh, hey, Treehouse. Let's see. It is 2022. I started animating when I was 24, so that would have been 18 years ago. The downside is I spent several of those years not really animating properly, just kind of dicking around and doing my own thing. Not always a good thing. But I've only been a little bit more serious about it the past few years, and it's just this year I finally got off my butt and tried to push myself further. Because I do have a problem with getting complacent where I am. And you don't want to do that because then you don't grow. And you want to grow as an animator because then you get better at telling your stories. You get better at showing off characters and all that stuff, and it's always exciting when you finally recognize that you've grown as an artist. And some of it came from the fact that I'm self-taught for the most part. I do kind of wish that I'd gotten off my butt and started to do this a year and a half ago, but I didn't have the opportunity that I did now to grow. Yeah, I like this one better. I think I'm just gonna. This is it's lazy, but oops, didn't want to actually delete that. Just wanted to copy it. Yeah, this is a bad habit of mine where I end up recycling my assets like this a lot, but sometimes you want to save a few minutes. There we go. But yeah, so I guess I've been animating now for at least 18 years. Only the last 4 of them I've actually been putting more time and effort into trying to get better at stuff. It's always a challenge because if you want to get better, that means you have to work a lot harder than you are. And if you're already working hard and you're not getting the results you want, then sometimes it feels like it's a losing battle to have to put more time and effort into something that you're not going to get anything out of. But the truth of the matter is, you really do want to put that extra time in. You just got to find out how to. Here we go. So yeah, you can see me putting in a little bit, recycling some of my lazy lighting stuff here. This helps the character stand out, because if I get rid of all this lighting, you can see just how flat this all is. It just looks blank, there's no texture to it, but if you put that in, then you have the illusion that there's a little bit of light, and if you put that in, you have a little bit more shadow around there, and now the character stands out a little bit more. And it's funny, you just do a little bit of that stuff, like right here. You can see, yeah, it looks nice on its own, but you put that little bit of extra lighting in a few spots, and everything comes together. And it's visually, it's still pretty cheap looking by a lot of animation standards, because what professionals will do is they will use the colors instead of me half-assing it and using shadow layers that I end up recycling. But for web animation and things like that, sometimes you have to cut corners because the software isn't perfect either. So, because this is Adobe Animate, and It's not a recent version of it, otherwise I'd be paying them a subscription. I swear to God, I got like the last copy of Adobe Animate Portable X number of years ago, and I wish I still had my CD, because I don't have my installation CD because I still have a few glitches with it. But yeah, when you do web animation like this, you have to cut some corners here and there, and it's not always the best thing to do. I know professional animators generally have more of an in-house studio way of doing stuff than what I do. But I'm not. I'm only technically a professional animator at this point, because if you're a professional, you get paid for it. And I've got all of one little short job that I'm doing for a guy where I'm doing an animated promo on the side. So yeah, you can see how all that little bit of extra lighting here just creates the illusion of texture. So now instead of this looking flat and mildly illuminated, you get the darker shadows there, which imply that these are ridges around there. So yeah, that stone setting there is all creating an artificial eye, which is really just a cool effect. I did a very crude sketch of this on a sketch pad just for this room, and it was originally going to be more of a cavern than it was a temple, but I couldn't get the temple to work. I mean, I couldn't get the temple. I couldn't get the cavern look that I wanted here to work. Originally, this was all going to be bluish, and this eye was going to be purple, just so it matches the previous scene. Where's my scene? So, yeah, I was going to originally match this color scheme right here, because it's very pretty. But by the time I got to finishing up this fight scene here, I was starting to get real tired of these colors, so I went with green instead. Not that I'm not proud of how this came out or anything. Oops, I gotta fix that too. There we go. Yeah, I spent a week on just the second shot of that fight scene, but I also spent a week on the first actual shot of the fight scene. So this first shot over here, that was 1 week's worth of work. I'll turn off the audio. I'll turn off most of the audio. So the reason that took as much work as it did is, even though I storyboarded this, you know, I've never done any shots like this. So I took everything I learned on that and brought it over here where you see a little more camera motion, but you also see much more character motion. So, oh wait, that's right. This was 8 days of work, not 7, but we'll say a week just so it makes it sound like I learned something a little faster. And it's depressing. If I had another week, then I would definitely add another at least 2 seconds to this fight scene, because I was having fun with doing this, and this really feels like it's still the start of a fight scene. But because this is, again, a 1 minute short, that has to be the stopping point. And yeah, it also works as a joke. I'm trying to think if there's any other extra little effects I can add to this. But yeah, this is all exciting stuff, because I've always wanted to do sword fights. I was kind of thinking of doing something a little bit more Jason and the Argonauts with this at one point. But this was already so much work. Because realistically, if I had a little bit more, if I had just a little bit more time, I would extend this fight at least another 2 seconds. Because I'm still amazed that this is what 8 seconds. This is 2.5 seconds right here, just this alone. 1, 2, 5. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3. Oh wait a minute, 10.5. Yeah, that's just okay. That's 10. That's 2.6 seconds. My mistake. But still, that that was all a week. That was all a week's worth of work, and I really wanted to do some more. If I had more time, I probably would have done just a hint more, because you can. It's only up until this point right here that the characters really start to get into it when they fight. And having to cut that off at that point was just a little sad, because even though I was happy to be done with it, I kind of wanted to do a little bit more, and I want to do more sword fights in the future. Yeah, I don't have a choice, damn it. So I'm gonna have to add in something here and something there. So it's probably gonna be a little bit of fire. So I'll have that way I have a little bit more of a lighting source. And then that means I'll have to play around with this to add some flicker to it, because I'll have a little source of light right there and a little source of light right there. Like I said, I want to try and make this world look like there's a little bit more life to it than there actually is, because it makes everything stand out. And it's very visually satisfying also. And besides, I think I actually might have a shortcut. So you never want to be too lazy when you animate, because granted, you've seen everything that I've done here. That's a hell of a lot of work on its own. But you never want to be too lazy. Not just because other animators are watching are going to call you out on it, but you never want to be too lazy because you don't want to shortchange yourself, because you really want to grow. In my case, because I'm self-taught, because I do my own thing so much, I really just want to put out the best stuff I can that's possible, because then I can grow myself an actual YouTube audience and get a little bit of independence, and I can start pursuing some bigger small projects. Because I don't know about you guys, I really am tired of watching video game adaptations and seeing them turn into dog shit. Because the stories are there. All it takes is the right creative team, and I see lots of perfectly qualified creative teams out there. But they keep getting shit scripts, or having to do all kinds of weird things with casting. Because I don't understand Hollywood, even though I'm trained in off their skill sets in a lot of ways. I don't know. Maybe it's just because of how much I like stories in general, but I really just want to see the stories come to life on screen. It's like one of my favorite examples for a terrible movie. This is one of the worst video game adaptations I've seen, that had a really good creative team behind it and a lot of the right ideas, was Silent Hill. That Silent Hill movie that they did in 2006 was really terrible, like cartoonishly awful. And where that film really suffered from was, the script was everything. Was everything. In every movie, the script is a make or break for whether or not you're going to be connected to these characters, to the world that they're in, and things like that. And You usually know in the first 5 minutes of a film, and this is by design, what type of a person the character is, what their strengths are, and what their weaknesses are. And Silent Hill had a lot of the right ideas, and then the script fell apart. And the first way the script fell apart was when you had the problem that the parents are having with the daughter. Yeah, this is only mentioned once in the film, and so you never hear it again. And that is, the daughter is sick with some kind of a mysterious illness, and the hospital treatment isn't working. This is blink and you miss it exposition almost, because you would think something like that would come up in the story later on, even just as a reference, but it never does. So that was the first problem. The second problem is the mother in that movie is probably the dumbest character I've ever seen a professional screenwriter put out in a long time, and I'm still confused by the choices they made. So even though it sounds like I'm nitpicking, which I absolutely am, these are the type of things you'll want to nitpick as if you want to tell stories. So the first problem is the mother kidnaps the daughter and then is going to take the kid off to Silent Hill out of desperation to cure her of whatever ailment she has that is never mentioned again in the screenplay. And on paper, that's not a bad thing for a character. That's not a bad way to show off the character. That shows desperation. That shows desperation. That shows concern. That shows that the character, who's the mother, is at her rope's end. That's fine. Then you have her immediately get caught by a police officer and lead the cop on a chase down a mountain road and or mountain path that neither of them has been on at 80 miles an hour through fog in the dark of night with crap visibility. That's really stupid. The other problem that they did is they already made it obvious what the outcome of that film was, because they've got the mother crashing the car after seeing the ghost girl. Well, if you play the game, you never see Harry crash. You don't know how bad he's crashed the vehicle. But when they show it in the film, they kind of put it in your face that this was a really bad crash, and then they show her head hitting the steering wheel after the crash. And if you know anything about physics, even just the basics, you understand that if you come to a sudden stop with momentum that you've built up, I believe the impact is doubled. My grandfather was an engineer. He's explained this to me several times. So if you're going 40 miles an hour and your car hits a wall, it doesn't hit the wall at 40 miles an hour because you've got the added momentum of stopping at 40 miles an hour. It's technically an 80 mile an hour crash. That is usually, with the exception of in very rare cases, that's a fatal crash. So when you see a character doing it at like 60 or so miles down a mountain road and doing the same thing, they just gave away they inadvertently gave away the ending. There we go. That's one. All right. So the other problem is, this is a supernatural movie thing, and I know I'm not the only person who has this rule when they write, but you want to have your characters question everything that they're seeing. You don't take anything at face value. You got to question what you're seeing. You got to show that the character, even though they're being told a certain thing, they don't accept it. They're on edge the whole time. They're not trusting anything. And they didn't do that with the mother character in Silent Hill. She was just accepting everything at face value almost. And it got to be depressing to see that, because the guy who wrote Silent Hill is an Oscar-winning director. I mean, a winning director, winning writer. He's the co-writer of Pulp Fiction with Quentin Tarantino. And the mistakes he was making are real amateurish. And I don't know if he had to make them because either the studio or the director said, yeah, we don't need this or we don't want it. But they were embarrassing all the same. And I'm not as big a Silent Hill fan as I used to be, but I love the psychological stuff of it. And that was the last real problem the movie had. They cut out all the psychological stuff. They kind of made it just a monster movie, which, yeah, you can get away with that. But you're cheapening the package at the same time. Because, you know, one of the things I really appreciated about the games was everything, at least after the first one, everything has some kind of a meaning psychologically, and that's clever. That's good stuff. You know, sign me up for that. The movie got rid of all that and just made everything kind of generic. And I think they did themselves a real disservice. I think they just did what Hollywood does. So I need to get off my ass and start running some experiments, because there has never not been a time where fans have gotten together and done their own animated adaptation or short film based on a popular IP. And I've got, what is it, I think I've got 4 video game adaptation short films I want to do. Even though they would just essentially be bits and scenes or long sequences of stuff. The idea is I want to see if I can put out something, if not better, then at very least on par with what a studio could do. And that's part of the reason this toon is the way it is, and why you see me obsessively nitpicking all the little details here. It's because I'm trying to build my skills up, because I've got stuff I really want to do. I've got a Silent Hill short I want to do. I've got a Resident Evil short I want to do. I've got a Mortal Kombat short I want to do. And then I've got the Castlevania short I've wanted to do for years. Granted, the thing is, I've always had my own rules for what doing a proper adaptation of something else would be, and that is, I take 60% of established lore, and then I leave just a little bit of room for me to just add in whatever I want. And usually what I want to do is I like to add in character, but sometimes you might want to take that lore a separate direction, but still not bastardize what people expect. Because I watched a little bit. I watched that 10-minute clip for when that last Mortal Kombat film came out. This is the one they just did, and they started it off. Looks like 200 years in the past, which I don't remember. I don't even remember my Mortal Kombat lore as well as I used to, since I lost a lot of faith in the series. But yeah, I know. Imagine somebody caring about story in Mortal Kombat. Well, that was always me. I like the story, as simplistic as it was, but the whole opening of that film was just goddamn autosave. The whole opening of that Mortal Kombat film was kind of just showing off Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and the dialogue was really bad. The characters were so-so. They were kind of there, but the directing was really bad, and I felt sorry for Joe Taslim and Hironoki Sanada, because they were doing a really good job in their performance. Oh, hello, Shoujo. No, I'm still on for a little while longer. I'm just finishing up an extension of this shot here. This is Dungeons in Debt. I'm down to my last scene finally. This is coming out next Monday. Just rambling on as I work about I believe the 4 video game toons I want to do, where it's essentially each one of these is just my little own adaptation of something. And so I was getting into how much I didn't like the writing or really much of anything in that last Mortal Kombat adaptation that they did, because they had the guy who wrote that had some interesting ideas, but I never watched the full film. I just watched that first 10 minutes that they posted online, and it was kind of depressing because I could see bits and pieces of ideas he had on page that were really good, but the direction was not good. It was flat. It felt rushed. There wasn't a lot of impact to what characters were doing, and I get to watch the actors they had in there, and you can see the actors are really trying, and you can see bits and pieces of the characters that are coming out that are very good, but overall it was a clusterfuck. And because I have my own obsessiveness about things, if I find an idea I like that doesn't work, I just kind of sit there in the back of my head and piece together, well, how could you take an idea like this and make it work? So that's what I was doing, and I came to the conclusion that I actually had a pretty nice idea for an opening for a Mortal Kombat movie, even though it's just a fan thing. But because of my own writing abilities and things like that, I can put out something that's just a little bit better in certain ways. And also, the fact that I obsess about certain details isn't always a bad thing either. I didn't want to do a spear, but I'm going to have to do a spear here. Yeah. Feels a little cliche, but I'll take it. But yeah. I think video game adaptations have been garbage. I think they're purposely garbage because the studios just want the IP, and that's all that matters, and I understand that. You want the IP, you want to be able to do your own thing. But if you're going to do your own thing, don't half-ass it. So what I was looking at doing was I've got 5 video game short films that I want to do. I want to do one for Silent Hill, even though that would be the easy one, since that one would be a little bit more of a music video. But I want to do one for Silent Hill, I want to do one for Mortal Kombat, I want to do one for Resident Evil, and then I want to do one for Castlevania, which is be the hardest one to do, because I'm not where I should be as an animator just yet, and that would be it's already a pretty crazy idea. Yeah, video game movies aren't hard. I've been saying this to people for 20 years. All you gotta do to make a good video game movie is you take 60% of the game. This includes the story, the characters, the monsters, and then you keep 40% where you can do whatever you want with it. In my case, I like character, so you want to do some of that. But if you gotta simplify lore or do anything that might be a little bit controversial for the fans, well, if you gotta make that choice, you gotta make that choice. But at the very least, if you retain the 60%, then you're not bastardizing what people are there to see too much. But yeah, video games have overtaken movies in terms of storytelling also. And I know that studios are jealous as hell about that, because even though some of them have bought video game companies to make sure that they keep control and get some of that profit, they're still losing money on their features. So this is just my compromise, I suppose. But the general idea is you let at some point you gotta let you gotta get the studio to back off, and you gotta let it you gotta let people see what they came to see. If they're there to see Resident Evil, you gotta make everything as good as possible. It's gotta match what the games have. If they're there to see Mortal Kombat, you gotta do the same. Don't make it a movie about an MMA fighter who's down on his luck who turns out to be a combatant, and then also is kind of the worst character in the film, which I felt very sorry for Louis Tan, because I watched a few of his scenes and I could see he's really trying, but the writing wasn't there. The direction in that film was really bad. He was a first-time director, and he had a basic grasp on action and shit, but there's too much editing in the fight. And I'm saying this after X number of decades watching crazy Hong Kong martial arts and things like that, where if you watch that stuff, you recognize real quick that letting the camera linger is so important, because then you get to see the actors really perform. Yep. The Halo show just bastardized like every piece of that franchise, but it's an alternate timeline, so whatever. Yeah, you're right. I saw that, Soko. That was embarrassing, and Steven Spielberg needs to retire, because he's one of the producers of that show, and that was an embarrassment. And even someone like me who only knows just a little bit about Halo because I never got into it, the changes he made, like where he has Master Chief commit suicide, and then Master Chief just gets hacked by Cortana, and then so she's really been Master Chief all along, and blah blah blah. That's just a little bit goddamn disrespectful, and they don't. These studios don't understand. Fans don't. Fans want. All you have to do for a video game movie is what you do for a comic book film. That's all you got to do. You take the lore, you take the characters, you take the story, you match it as best you can. Maybe you got to make some changes on casting, or maybe you got to make some changes on characters. But if you keep everything so that it mirrors the game just enough, and then if you have enough room to allow it to be its own film, the audience will stick with you through thick and thin, because you're giving them what they want. But studios don't do that right now. They want to play games, and I don't know if they think they're winning them, because they're absolutely not. It's Jesus Christ. It's like the new Resident Evil TV series. Yeah, I know I'm back bitching on Resident Evil. That looks like probably the worst bit of fan fiction anybody who wasn't sober could have come up with. And then to get somebody like Lance Reddick in it, who is a really good actor, and then they don't even let him look like the character, because he's supposed to be Wesker, and they don't give him the shades. He doesn't have the trench coat or the dark outfits or anything like that. They're doing their own weird little thing with him. But if you're gonna do that, you gotta let the actor be the character from the game on some level. And it doesn't look like they're even letting him do that. That is just a little bit insane. Because I know it's also more about his daughters, which Wesker never had any daughters, but we won't get into that. But the other problem is this is a character who doesn't care about anybody or anything else but himself. So, if you're not going to respect it, then call it something else. Don't call it Resident Evil. I've been saying that ever since I saw the first film, because the first film isn't it at all. The first film is, outside of being a knockoff of Aliens by James Cameron, because it takes all the beats from the script double check my lighting here. Oh, good. Hey, that doesn't look too bad. Um, there are no characters in that first movie. Nobody has a character arc. Yes, they have goals, sure. But if the goal is to just not die, that's that's not really a goal. That's a survival instinct. Everybody has that. You got to give me something more than that. But still, I'm Mr. OCD about this stuff, so it's a lot easier to criticize this shit than it is to make it, which I absolutely know. Because even making my own silly stuff like this is real time consuming. But oddly enough, it's a lot easier to take somebody else's work and just kind of adapt that than it is to come up with something original. Because the rules, the lore, and everything else are established for you already. And all you gotta do is just add your own little twist. Oof. That doesn't look very good yet. Damn. It's always when you have to do little details like this that everything turns into a pain in the ass. See, Shoujo. Not to sound rude, but I seriously want to push back on comics and games being adapted to movies. Comics work for the most part since it's sequential art, and video games is a multimedia experience. Yeah, you're not wrong. The problem is some of these games have stories that would and should translate with minimal effort perfectly to the big screen. But studios are very jealous about video games, because video games are competition. Hollywood, for over 100 years has been the central hub for entertainment. Well, it only took video games 25 years to catch up to them. That used to be something that they would joke about. And now it's something where games are making more than movies, depending on how bad the year was. If I remember correctly, the first year we had COVID lockdowns, movies got trashed, and because everybody was in lockdown, so everything was about games and shit. But for a movie, it's not that hard. You just got to get people in there to do it who, one, like the source material and don't want to fuck with it. Two, actually care about what they're doing. And three is the big one. They don't have a studio looking over their shoulder saying make it more like this. And that's a deal. There's only one person in movie history who ever got a deal like that, and he was blacklisted for the rest of his life afterwards, and that was Orson Welles. Damn it, this is going to be difficult, isn't it? Let's go to 40. Yeah, that's not terrible. Yeah, this is where I usually flub on stuff. There's a certain motion I'm trying to catch here. But, yeah, I know everybody has their own ideas on stuff, but these are just mine. I get real obsessive about this stuff just because a lot of the stuff I obsess over is stuff that works on its own and it doesn't need to be changed. Let's see, this needs to go over. I think we're just going to do this. Get out of here. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, you can see me really fumbling to get this straight. This is why I take shortcuts earlier on. Because these two frames seem to be okay. It's just this last one. It's just a little off. But this is, but still, like I was saying earlier, if you find a way to make this so it works, then it pays off in the end. And it's all worth it. It's exciting. Yeah, well, that's not too... Autosave is kicking in again. That's not too bad. Oh, good. Let's go back. Yeah, the reason the motion is off is there's a bit of an illusion here. Look at the foreground here. You see how it's stretched a little wider up front and then gets a little bit more condensed in that last shot. That's on purpose. That's a very simple technique I learned a long time ago. I don't always get it to work right, which is why I don't use it often. But this creates also a little bit of an illusion of depth. So the foreground is definitely going to stretch visually and contort just a little bit as a camera pulled back. Hey, there we go. So, yeah, this is, it's, when I find little things like this to nitpick, that animating becomes a chore, but I don't want to half-ass it. Because you want everything to really be solid. Because it looks, when it works, it's beautiful. And normally I would make this whole thing one symbol, but that's it. Oh, Sokoshi, going out to eat, have a good rest of the day. I'm going to try and catch future streams. Not a problem. I'm going to try and do my streams on Sundays, and I did just see your donation to my Patreon, Soko. Thank you very much. I appreciate the $50. I always have trouble estimating the value of my own work anyways, so I've never had a very high opinion of it, not because I think it's bad, just because it's everything I do is always just me sitting down and doing it myself, and I never really think about how much to charge for anything like that, other than, well, I'm gonna sit down and do something like this anyways, so I'm not sure I can charge, $30 or $40 for a commission. Maybe I can just do 10 or 15 and call it even, but I do have to be more realistic about that. That's always been a huge problem I've had as an artist. Don't always see the value in my own work, so I don't charge appropriately for it. And I do have to crack down on that just a little bit, because bills don't get any cheaper. Real pain in the ass, but that is part of the life of an artist. Alright. Let's see, so I want that like that. Yeah, you haven't missed it too much, Shoujo. It's me finishing up the lighting on some of these last few shots here. This is the last scene in the toon, outside of one area that has a little bit of text. But it's exciting to finally almost be done with this, because the deadline is next Monday on Newgrounds. And the Newgrounds version will be slightly different than the YouTube version. The Newgrounds credits will be a few seconds longer, but because this has to be a 1-minute short on YouTube, the credits are going to have to be a little shorter than I would normally have them, because I don't want to not list the voice actress or the people who did music for this, because that's some dirtbag shit, and I wouldn't want people doing that to me. So this is I'm gonna try and get this to 53 seconds. It is currently 42 seconds long, so I've got just that last little bit. Oh, well, I don't have that many interesting stories to share. If I did, if I did, I might have a few more viewers, but and actually be able to hang on to a few more viewers at a time. But not all the stories I have are interesting and or exciting. That's well, I'll fight with that in a moment. But yeah, I was saying earlier that the reason I have to add these two little bits of sphere, these two little spheres here with stuff, is because I need a little bit more life in this shot. In the other room, I had all, damn it, I had all the glimmers from all the crystals to add just that little hint of life, like there's actually something else going on here. And in this room, I didn't have any of that because this room it's more stone. And yeah, I can play around with the lighting and I can make everything look a little darker and drearier, so it's not too much like it came out of a coloring book. But that doesn't add in any semblance of there being life to the world that she's in. So that's what these are for. I'll essentially do a little lava lamp effect. Let's see. Yeah, that is way too much. Almost there. Good. Okay. Alright, that's the hard part. So let's see now. So this is where things always get a little challenging. But this is where everything comes together at the same time. So normally what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an illusion to the lighting, like this is a little bit of a lava lamp. But the way to get around that is that, and then I just use boom. So what's going to end up happening is this little bit of coloring here is going to be floating upward like that. Although you can see how slow everything is processing right now, so we'll just do this. Because this has always been one of Flash's biggest weaknesses. And it's not their fault, with the exception of the fact that they charge way too fucking much, and now you can't even own something privately. Makes me happy I bought this copy. I still wish I had the goddamn installation CD. And the paperwork that came with it, because then I would have a backup in case anything happened. So the idea here is we just create bubbles, and because I work in reverse, and I don't know why, but sometimes what I like to do is I start off in the middle of an action, and rather than go forward, I go backward, just for a frame or so. So, and normally I would also storyboard this out just a little bit, but I'm just going to dig around. So I do that, then I can see how the motion is happening. So you can see this is a little much right here. The middle section is fine, but you've got these wider areas here that need to shrink inward. Oops. Did not want to hit that button. There we go. So you can see now there's just a little bit more connection to these two. And I don't have a lot of references for some of this stuff, so I just kind of make it up in my head and hope for the best. Which is and isn't a good thing, because on one hand it means my imagination is still working. On the other hand, it means I could be wasting my time in reinventing the wheel. And you don't always need to do that when you animate. God damn. Auto recovery save, blah blah. Oops. One, two. That's a... Okay, that is too much. Damn. Yeah, these are all little odd things in motion that I've picked up over the years. There we go. That's serviceable. Right. There we are. So I always like to have just a little bit of motion for these type of shots, where instead of it being a wider gap between the two, I try and find just for when you have liquids like this that are disconnecting themselves from each other, you kind of want to keep them just for the first shot of the disconnection here a little closer. It kind of looks like an A-bomb now. Well, A-bomb explosion. Passable. And then just a little bit of this. There we are. All right. Even though this is only going to be repeated a little bit for a very brief cycle. Still trying to make sure I do a good job here. Because even if I do a bad job, it's not going to take anybody out of the toon, but you don't level up as an artist by taking too many shortcuts. It's always hard to find the right shortcuts to take and which ones you don't actually need, because if you take too many shortcuts, you don't grow. And if you don't grow, you turn into Linkara. The last thing I want to do is be the next guy that does the Lightbringer comic. Dear God. So here we've got a few frames. Let's take a look. Nah. So the middle bubble needs work. You can see it's stretching and expanding just too much. But I think I can get away with doing this. Because I'm trying to create a sort of a visual bloop here. Yeah, Jojo Linkara. I'm not even sure what kind of a critic you could quantify him as. Because he's a terrible comic artist. He's a terrible comic writer. I've seen some of his criticism videos. He's kind of not much of anything. He did one video going over all the Thing from Another World comics. And I remember those comics in the 90s. They weren't great. It was dark horrors. The art was kind of cheesy. The writing was 1990s comic writing for the most part. So it knows what it is. It's trying to it's trying its best to convince you it's better than what you think it is. It's not, but it's got its own charm about it. I remember him in one of his thing reviews throwing a shit fit over the Thing infecting somebody by touching him. Yeah, he's basically what most YouTube... They're pop culture critics now. That's right. They're not comic critics. They're pop culture critics, because you can't criticize comics. Because comics are pop culture now, and pop culture is above all. Blah. He went on this little like 3-minute diatribe about how the Thing couldn't infect somebody by touching them in the comic. And I almost responded to him with a clip from the John Carpenter film, which those comics are based off of. And yeah, he's full of shit. The second to the last guy that the Thing kills in the Carpenter film was Gary. And it kills Gary by sticking its hand into his face, so he can't scream and cry out for help. Yeah, these guys don't... They don't know anything about anything anybody really cares about. That's why they complain about comic books. But that's also why they're so surprised at the backlash they've gotten over it, because essentially they're out there defending people writing comics who shouldn't be writing comics because they can't write comics. It doesn't take a lot of hard work to write a comic. What it does take is a lot of time and a lot of planning. Because I mean, shit, I've written comics. I don't put as much work into them as I should, but granted, I'm also still trying to find my own little art style and storytelling style, so I get focused on that. But comics, anybody can do a comic, except for Linkara. And that's also the guy who's criticizing comics. But the reason they defend the new stuff is because they've got friends and connections who work at these industries. Okay, that second bloop is just a little much, but we're almost there. So, yeah. Art, history, things like that, these are all classically human elements of storytelling. And it's very sad to see what people have done to the comic characters now, because it's all one big circle jerk. They are destroying the old gods by reinventing them in their own image. But the old gods, like Superman and Batman, characters like that, these are characters created by people who actually had life experience. Stanley was out there, served in the army. He did, if I remember correctly, he wrote plays that they would do on stage to entertain soldiers who were suffering from stress and battle fatigue, just to give them some levity. You had Bill Finger, who ended up doing most of Bob Kane's work, while Bob took credit for it. Want to do comic, but I can't draw, and art is expensive. Well, don't know how to help you out of actually having to buy an artist to do your work. The problem with that is, this is something you might want to consider. So we've kind of got a really rotten economy starting to settle in. You might want to save your money up for things like food and gas, just for right now. As for writing a comic, you're probably going to want to learn some 3-act structure. In my case, I still use screenplay structure. But 3-act structure is mostly screenplay structure. It's just it doesn't have the rules, because it's written. You can use 3-act structure for almost anything. But as for art, you could also do what a lot of other people I've seen in the past do. They go digital. So what they'll do is they'll get like a Blender or some other 3D software, and they'll learn how to use that, and then they can create character models or take pre-existing character models. But as for hiring an artist right now, I got no clue what's going on in the world. It's starting to really get fucking weird. So you might want to save some money if you can. You can't kill the heroic, so it manifests itself somewhere else, away from the prying eyes. That seems to be what's going on in the indie comic circle, from what I'm gathering. As for how well they're doing, I don't know, because I don't read U.S. comics anymore. I got so burned out with what they were doing to their own superheroes that I just tuned out. And I'm happy that the indie comics scene seems to be following what U.S. comics used to be. And I'm glad those guys are making some money and just keeping that dream alive. But the damage that's been done to U.S. comics, I actually think it's irreparable. It's because you get people in there who they like to do comics because they think they're in control of something, and yeah, they kind of are. You're in control of other people's childhood heroes and villains and things like that. But they treat it like it's a trophy. I swear, it's just oh, it's a trophy. Look what I did. I'm part of. It's almost like what trolling groups used to do all those years ago, where they'd screw with somebody, and then they'd get some kind of an image that's, Lizard Squad was here and things like that. It's kind of like that, only it's for people who claim to be all for social causes, even though they don't practice what they preach. It's a little much, but I think I'm going to let that be. Ooh. I'm hearing the wind pick up outside. I guess we got a storm coming in. No complaints. I love rainy weather. Visually, it's always cool to just sit back and watch it rain, watch the clouds go by in the sky. That's just something I've always appreciated. All right. All superheroes are elitist and non-humanist figures who fight for humanist values against elite figurines who fight on behalf of power morality. Yeah, you're right. However, uh, it's always been kind of a cruel irony that superheroes are all actually just corporate creations now. Hey, look at that. It almost works. I think this last bit doesn't come together very well, I don't think. That's what I'm missing. Ugh. But I know that's not a Western thing, that's just in general, because of all the money that's in superheroes. Chinese superheroes, Japanese superheroes, UK superheroes, American superheroes all have the same problem. They're all corporately owned. And there's always that bit of irony there. But who knows what's going to end up happening in the world. The villains never refer to themselves as such, but instead speak on their power and lordship. Kind of. It depends on the villain. You know, what is it? There are villains like the Joker who just doesn't care, and then there are villains like Magneto who very much does care. He just cares too much. At least that's what I remember of him. I don't know what changes they've done to him over the last few years, but that was always a thing. He was sort of the dark side of Professor X, and he always did have a little bit of a point to make too, because of his own past of being a survivor of the Nazi concentration camps. I just know right now Disney is talking about when they do the X-Men, they want to have Professor X and Magneto be black characters, because it's been too long since World War II and stuff like that. So they've said that they can't realistically do Magneto and Professor X anymore that way. So they want them to be characters from the 60s who were black civil rights figures. And I know some of that was based off stuff Stan Lee said, but that kind of takes away, because there's especially in this one like Magneto as a villain, that was a guy that went through way too much, way too young in life, and we have not had anything like World War II happen since then to justify a character like that. And I know they love to keep calling out the what happened in the civil rights era as being on the same level or close to it. It isn't. I would say something closer to Tiananmen Square in China would very much fit that mold. But even then, I'm only looking at this from the outside and not the inside, because I'm not Chinese. I only know what history over there has been leaked. Things are to alter in the next 50 years. We must embrace Byron's ideal, the cultured thug. Actually, I've had my own theories on that, and I've come to the conclusion the easiest way to deal with all this silly shit is to do the one thing the other side doesn't want, and that is don't give a fuck. Now, the problem with that is you can't not give a fuck about everything. You gotta find the right things to actually give a fuck about. But you also can't deal with that crowd as if they're rational, because they're not. They've, for whatever reason, their thought process and their personalities have devolved into this. I was actually just watching a video on it from a guy who suffers from PTSD, mental illnesses, and some personality disorders as a result of growing up under an abusive mother. And he was saying, because he's a former woke guy. He said he used to share all his opinions, and he started to make the connections between his past trauma and a lot of the mindset that this crowd has, because they all have a very shared mindset and personality, and I've always found that very disturbing in a lot of the videos I've seen, as well as the people I've encountered. And I used to just think, oh, it was acting out, and it turns out, no, I think it's conditioning. I think you've got a contingent who has been conditioned to be like this, and that's really sick, because then you take away who people really are. And even if I don't like them, don't want anything to do with them, that's a horrible thing to do to another person. And I've always thought it was very perverse, not just for the psychological damage it causes, but the fact that it operates off a cult-like mentality. Specifically, the sense of urgency, the continuous accusations and proclamations of being under threat or duress. And then there's the really sick stuff. And I've seen Scientologists, of all people, do this too. And that is the accusations that go around, where they will accuse the other side of something. Where you're only like this because you're X, or you're only like this because you're Y, or you're guilty of something by just because of your existence means you're guilty of something, and all that silly shit. That's how cults operate. And I know everybody used to give churches so much shit for doing the same thing, and yeah, they're absolutely right to do that, because there was a time when religion used to be a little bit too big for its own britches, and it would do that stuff. These aren't those times, though. And I don't know, I just kind of want people to be left alone. Let them be who they are. If they're not hurting anybody or doing anything bad, fuck it, let them be. It's important, a lot of people don't value, this is just my observation and some of my experiences, they don't value who they are unless they have something special about them to value, whether it is being attractive, being smart, or being strong, or things like that. Well, there are other things you got to worry about too that come with all that stuff. I've honestly felt it's an internal thing. It's our personalities make us special, because nobody is just one thing, and people who try and just be one thing are a real threat to their own existence, because what they don't get is again, observation, no proof, I would say a personality, we've all got our own personalities. A personality is essentially like dice. It's got multiple sides. It's all connected to each other, though. And when you gotta make a roll, and it lands on a different part of your personality, that is still you. I know Jung was just always discussed the joining of the shadow and the light in order to keep who you are as a person intact, because there's the shadow side of you, which people want to pretend doesn't exist or that they don't have anything to do with, but that's dangerous because you are denying something inherent about yourself. And if you keep pushing that away, it's going to lash out in other parts of who you are, and then you stop functioning, at least functioning on the level that you used to. You got to be aware of these things. So that's just my thought. And I wish we didn't have to do things like gatekeep hobbies and just let people do what they wanted, have fun and stuff like that. But, jeez, did you see the Street Fighter 6 character designs that got leaked the other day? I'm still kind of laughing at it, even though I shouldn't be, because it's really pretty hammy. They've got the bulk of the female characters covered up in various ways so that you can't make out their form or they're not too quote-unquote objectified. Somebody showed Cammy's new design. She's no longer wearing her unitard. She's got on yoga pants that cover up everything, and then because you can't even show the upper body now, she's got a denim jacket so she doesn't show off cleavage or shoulders or anything like that. And she's also got kind of a weird hairdo. I don't remember what the hairdo is, but I see all that stuff, and I kind of realize, that character has been around since 1987, and this doesn't look like the character anymore. This looks like somebody just went over everything and said, no, you can't show too much leg, you can't show any arm, no ankles, because we don't want to sexually objectify everybody, even though Rule 32 still exists, and there's somebody who's going to find something out there that they're going to like, that's going to make everybody uncomfortable or laugh at them and things like that. Blah, all that silly shit. Nobody needs any of it. But Capcom made this choice, and I know they're going to make sure people can't mod these games. They're going to do that. There we go. Look at that. Hey, that came out pretty damn good. They're going to keep people from modding the games because they don't want the bad PR that comes with letting people just own the product and modify it and something like that, even though that kind of used to be the way. But still, I realize every year, I realize that I'm just a little bit closer to being a dinosaur, because I like to let people do their own thing, mind their own business. They want to do a mod, of something, let them do it. If they're not stealing it, if they're not breaking anybody's stuff, if they're not hurting anybody, let them be. But then again, I've also just been reading a lot more Jung and existential stuff because I'm trying to get a little bit better with my character profiles psychologically. That way, I've got characters who are on slightly different emotional states, which is something you want, because then you have characters who can be high-strung, and we can have characters who are also dead inside, if you so want, and things like that. And there's an amount of believability that I haven't quite been able to match just yet. And I don't know, I'm still trying to sort out a little bit more of the psychological stuff for Breached when I get back to doing that, because I've got most of Chapter 1 done. I just haven't quite sorted out how I want a few future things that are going to happen and happen, because there's all kinds of different ways you can do stuff. But only one or two, believe it or not, only one or two of those ways is the right way to do something, which does make everything a bit more of a challenge in the long run. But that's just me trying to figure stuff out, because we've all got patterns in our behaviors or in our storytelling, and I'm still trying to find a way to match that to characters I write. So, okay, so here's the save here. We'll take a look and see how this goes, because I kind of like what I'm seeing so far. It adds just a little bit of life. So now, instead of this looking just like a stone room, it's got that little semblance of something else happening. Oh yeah, that's not bad. I think I'm gonna add one more frame to this. Even though I have to be careful with my timing, I kind of just like, if you do something right, you kind of want to extend it just a little bit more, just so it finishes the cycle. There we are. Yeah, it's not perfect, because there's still a lot of, kind of blank space over here. I'm going to most likely have to add another one of these stone eyes right up here and right up there, because just having that dead space there, it's a bit much of a gap right there. And there is a reason that I keep having these three right here, and that's part of the final joke of this last scene. But yeah, it's when you got to do character details like this that everything, characters, background details like this, that everything, yes, it comes to life, but you can see it takes a lot more time to do. But I'm mostly just happy that I finished up the fight scene. It's partially sound synced right now. I've got a little bit more sound sync too, and I've got to set aside some time to put in the Bitty Bats from Castle Crashers here, because this is all one big Castle Crashers universe tune. Oops. I just saw something. Ah, that's what I'm catching. Yeah, this is a continuity error right here. You see right there how it's blank? Yeah, I've got multiple continuity errors over here because I moved stuff around too much and didn't catch it. That's okay. Here's how you fix things when you're lazy. I'm glad I caught that, because I've been so focused on other stuff I might have missed it. There we go. Ooh, I smell cooked ham. I guess my mom's hungry a little early today, because dinner time isn't for another 20 minutes. Yeah, well, considering what my father's been eating for the last 40 days, which has mostly been fish, I'm sure he's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that did the cooking. So, That's the that's the easy part. I know there's probably an extra frame of something here I could adjust on the little lava lamp light, but I can't think of what it is right now. So, and because I've used so much time trying to make that work, I'm going to do what I generally prefer not to do, and that is I'm going to cannibalize this and carry it over here. Granted, this will, it works, it all still works in my favor, sure. But you don't want to, like I said earlier, you don't want to cannibalize stuff too much. Because people like the detail. It is, oops, where is that last one? That's where it is. Okay, I've got everything on the wrong damn layer. All that detail makes a huge difference. Because everything just adds up little by little. And yeah, since I think what I'm gonna do though is this one time. Normally I just do stuff, and I don't ask a lot from people, other than just watch it and enjoy it. I think I'm gonna be selfish this time. I'm gonna say, if you want more episodes of this, you guys are gonna have to work for it just a little bit. So if you want episode 2, I'm gonna be selfish and say I want let's just say 5 shares on social media, and I want 2,000 views before I do another toon. And I don't like having to ask for stuff like this because I prefer to just do it and let it go out there, but I think I'm going to be a little selfish from now on and do this from time to time with some of my work. That way, it's not all on me, for one thing, because that does get to be kind of a burden. But also, but it also means that I'm not having to do everything by myself. Because I do the same things everyone else does. I promote it on Reddit, I promote it on Twitter, I promote it on a couple Facebook groups, and things like that, and I'm only one person doing this. So I think I will say for everybody, if you want another episode of this, we'll just say 2,000. This needs 2,000 views minimum. This needs, let's say, 150 likes. Well, no, let's say 100 likes. And it needs at least 5 shares on social media. And then if you do that, I'll do another episode, because I've got 4 episodes of this plotted out. I think I've got my crude template for how things happen in this little world, and a few other characters and things like that. But I can't keep beating my head against social media and doing everything myself anymore. Yeah, I smell cooked ham. My mom got into the ham. This wouldn't be a problem if my father didn't have chicken the other night, because he only gets like 1 day a week. Because he's still early on in his diet, he gets 1 day a week where he gets to eat something other than fish. Because he's got to have one meal consisting of fish and salad. Uh-huh. Watch out. You can let her out. She's being a stinker. You realize Dad still has to have a salad, right?
That's fine. We like it.
Okay. Yep, I called it. Let's take a look and see how this works, because I just saved a moment ago. So let's see. And this is where the laziness also comes in. You'll notice the perspective on this is all wrong now. But if I did things well enough, I can be properly lazy. Nah, I didn't do things well enough. I've got to redo this whole little area. And that's fine. Like I said, you don't want to copy and paste everything. But this adds life to... goddamn autosave. This adds life to the overall toon. It makes everything look a little bit more lived in, which was a problem I spent so many years with it in my previous work, and I used to just think it was because I wasn't doing my characters well enough. And realistically, no. The problem was the characters are only half of what makes an animated world feel alive. Camera angles and motions help, sure, but realistically, it's stuff happening in the backgrounds, whether it's big or small. It's all good, though, because all this stuff adds up, and we'll see. So I think 4 episodes of this is probably all I can manage for right now. Maybe only 3. We'll see. The year is half over. I still got a lot of shit to catch up on. Even though I do have a lot of fun working on this, because this is something different than what I normally do, and this has also helped me grow an awful lot. Because I've been catching some spots in some of my other animated projects outside of this that are lacking. And I need to fix that just a little bit. Well, and it doesn't mean I'm going to have to start over on at least 2 of those projects, but I didn't get that far into them, so it's okay. Ugh, I hear my father hacking downstairs. Sounds like something went down the wrong windpipe in the throat, but this is the problem when you're being a caretaker for your folks. You gotta you stop when you hear stuff like that and just listen for a moment. But that's the thing. They were also doing this stuff for me when I was a little kid, so it's not like there isn't a basis for it, or it's a one-way street. All right, get this last little bit here finished, and then I think that'll be it for today's stream. So I've got another animated project I've got to get back to. Got a gentleman's animated ad for his Steam game that I have finished a little bit more work on. It's still only the animatic. I'm going to change that today because I'm going to get a little bit of it done. But the idea is to get enough of that done so I'm not too behind on what's on the project. Because he is paying me a little bit of money for this and would appreciate having it done. And it's also my very first animated ad that I've ever done for anybody, so I want to make sure I do it right. Yep, damn it. Didn't want to do that. Get over here. Okay. Oh, there you go. I made a Super Mario Brothers brick block. I wasn't even trying. Damn it. Well, feel bad that I gotta fix a little bit of this there, so it doesn't quite look like that, because it looks nice. I'll just have to remember how to do that. Do that some other time. Because outside of the other animated project I'm doing, there is also Resident Evil 2 Reanimated. So last year, I did the first two sections on the reanimated opening to the first game from 1996. And I'm doing that this time again. I've got the first section done, minus a little bit of audio sync. And then I've got half of the second section done. I need to catch up on that, but I need to finish off a little bit more on this so I can move on. Otherwise, I'm going to fall behind on this and miss my Newgrounds deadline. But I've got the deadline to that. I've got the deadline to the animated ad for Steam, which is June 10th. And so I've got to play catch up on both. So the nice thing is once I finish this up, then I don't have to put anywhere near as much time into it anymore, because this is the bulk of the work, and then I can just do like one shot a day if I really wanted to be lazy, and then that's that. But the other projects need a little bit more TLC that I've given them. But it's all good, and it's nice to finally make progress as an artist, because goddamn, you spend so long doing stuff the same way, you don't even think about it because you get used to it, and you don't develop as much. And I'm finally starting to see the fruits of my labor pay off here, and it gets to be hard to stop and switch projects. But at the least, the other I get to. This will promote me to being a professional animator, even if I'm not a huge one, because the issue also comes down to, outside of time and things like that, the issue is I'm a one-man studio, which is, well, that on one hand I'm proud of that. On the other hand, that does limit me in terms of time, and I gotta get better at planning how I spend it. But still, here we go. Alright. So, next step is to loop this by continuing on. So, I just copy and paste a few frames from over here. And now we have a perfect loop. The problem, normally what I would do is I would just copy and paste the frames and drag them all over here and try to keep everything on the same layer. That's a little bit more risk than I'm willing to take, though, because all it takes is one or two fuck-ups, and it'll bite you in the ass. And I kind of prefer my ass to not be bitten any more than I already end up biting it as it is. Because when you juggle so many projects at once, sometimes your focus really takes a hit. I'm doing this manually just because there are other ways I could do this. I kind of like doing it manually just because there's a feel to it, and I can't explain why. Maybe it's just because that's how I've done it for so long, but it has a feeling to it where it's satisfying, and I don't know why. But it always feels wrong when I pump in the numbers in the properties to where things are. This is kind of looking like a setting from Mortal Kombat 4. but I'm not gonna complain, even though I think that was when Mortal Kombat started to really go downhill. Okay. Okay, everything matches. But that's the first problem. So, both sides match perfectly. You see how they're both in sync? I don't want that. So what I do is I just remove about 5 frames. And then, now because they're out of sync, that's a little bit more natural. Let's see, the last frame is right there. So you find the odd little things like that to do and put in here, and everything comes out for the better. I also need to do a little bit more of a reaction here where she's holding up the map and lowers her arms in disappointment, because as it is right now, she just looks basic frumpy. And I don't want basic frumpy. There we go. Autosave, you son of a bitch. Ugh. I appreciate you, but goddamn, your timing stinks. Jeez, there's a lot going on in this shot now. Hey, it looks good. I'm not going to fuss too much about it. So now I need to do the same over here to this other one. Which is easy enough to do, I hope. Same rule as before, just copy the frames. I said copy, not cut. Thank you. Get rid of that, because when you copy frames like that, it messes up the timeline. Save. Boom. Okay. Oh, I thought I deleted that. Yeah, you son of a bitch. Thought I was smart. That means I gotta get rid of that on every frame now. Yeah. Well, I was originally going to draw a separate section there for the other one, but it took me a little bit longer to get the bubbles done right. So, but it creates the illusion pretty well. Everything looks a little bit more natural. It just looks it looks a little bit more like a traditional D&D setting. And I ought to know, I remember as a kid looking at the old Dungeon Master's Guide, and the bestiary, or is it bestiary? No, the bestiary is what I call it. And looking at all the monsters and the settings in there. I do kind of miss the art from those classic books, because they don't do art like that anymore. I actually came across a real bitchin' Twitter account, Sci-Fi Art of the 1970s. It looks like all the books from my father's. I think I'll be a little lazy with this and shift this over. It looks like all the art from my father's science fiction books in his library. Yeah. eventually, when I get back on my feet and move out, I think I'm going to get myself a nice big oak bookcase and fill it up with some of those old books, just because I've got fond memories of them. Even even just skimming through them and looking at the artwork. And I am going to be lazy, but not too lazy. So I will copy you. Here we are. Boom. Close that off. All right, that is done. I still have some bits of lighting to play around with, and I've got a few other tricks up my sleeve to create the illusion of texture, because I don't like how flat that wall behind her looks. I can fight with that a little later. And I've got other things to do, like I've got to have her pull a map up here, because I've got the character literally double checking the map and then looking back up here. And I might play around with some lighting here just a little bit, but I don't know, that's it's all looking pretty legit. I just wish that the YouTube short duration wasn't 60 seconds. I wish it was 70 seconds, just so I had a little bit more timing freedom here, because I put all that work into this shot here, and this is all of 1.1 seconds, and everything is set to a certain time, and because this irritates me so much, I'll stretch it out just 2 frames. But you only get so much time to play with, and it gets to be very hard to have to condense things, especially that particular shot right there, because that was the first shot I did of this room. That's my establishing shot, and I don't know if it's there long enough, because originally it was just this and here. Originally it was this, and then it cuts to this, but I kind of need, it's missing a proper reaction from her, because this is her only reaction here, and I need this blank this blank shot over here, which won't be blank for too much longer, because I'll fix that later on today. But this shot here, I need her reaction to seeing that the treasure she's after isn't there. And the best thing to do really is have her, looking up and then looking back down at the map, just double checking. And then we cut to the outline right there where it shows, yeah, the treasure isn't there. Just save all that. But for the most part, I think that's going to be it for now, because I've got dinner my mom made. Had to use up some eggs. We've got chickens, so but it's looking pretty good now. There's actually a hint of life to it. Now it doesn't match this shot or this shot, which are still kind of empty. I may end up having to add a little bit more of a layer to the stones around here. Like, you see how I've got that little stretch of green on this rock, so now it creates a hint of texture to it. I'm probably going to have to do the same for this, and the stone wall here, which also I've got a bit of a continuity error, because you can see this stone wall stops right there, but this other one has just a little bit more stone there. But yeah, this is the tune. It's be nice to win first place on the Newgrounds Pico Day competition. I don't know if it's going to be good enough for that. I know Pico Day has generally been about being silly and lighthearted and stuff like that, and this isn't the funniest work that I've done, but it works still. Yeah, I'd say overall it's almost there. But it is 6:12, and I've got dinner here that needs to be eaten. And then I've also got to make sure my father has his salad, which I'm sure he's probably going to be a little disappointed in because he's tired of eating spinach after for dinner for every night for the last 40 days. But I'll go give it to him anyways and mix in some more broccoli. Because yeah, this is all stuff that's really good for your heart. If you're someone who, by some chance, is genetically predispositioned to having heart issues, you might want to eat a little bit more broccoli and a little bit more spinach. And if you can stomach it, eat broccoli, spinach, and beets. So, just a free little tip that I've learned. So, that's it for today's stream. I will do another one on Sunday. Sunday's stream next week will be a little different because Monday is the 11th. And the 11th is when Saturday is the 11th. Oh, not Sunday. Well, shit, if that's going to be the case, next stream is going to be on Friday. So, next Friday, I will do another stream. So have a good rest of your weekend.